Welcome to On the Middle East, the podcast of the award-winning media service Al Monitor, where each week we talk with the decision makers and thought leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in the Middle East. I'm Andrew Parasolidi, president of Al Monitor, and our guest today is Al Monitor columnist Ali Hashem. Ali has covered Iran and regional affairs for the past 15 years. He previously worked for BBC TV and other media outlets, and he's currently also a research fellow at Lancaster University. His research and writing focuses on the Middle East, with an emphasis on sectarianism, Iran, Lebanon, and Iraq. Today, Ali and I will be talking about Iran, its new president, Ebrahim Raisi, and what Raisi's coming to power means for Iranian politics, the fate of the Iran nuclear deal, and Iran's policies in the region. My conversation with Ali Hashem begins now. Ali, welcome to On the Middle East.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for inviting me to in this interview. So I look forward to answer as much as possible of your questions.
Well, I look forward to hearing from you on what's happening in Iran. And let's start with a piece you wrote for us last month, that the election of Ebrahim Raisi as president of Iran represents what you call the rise of the Hezbollahis. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, the Hezbollahis are more of the, what I can call the hardline ideologues of the Islamic Republic. These young, because most of them are from the younger generations, and they look forward to take Iran into a new phase of the Islamic Revolution, which is the phase where the society, the government, everyone in the country will all be on the same page with respect to the revolutionary objectives of the establishment. These men and women who are under the Hezbollahi banner, many of them were IRGC members, people who were with the Basij organization, people from within the establishments. They're religious. They have their own culture. They have their own way of thinking. They have their own vision of Iran. And they've been working on this for the past years. It did not start yesterday. This started almost 20 years ago. And it went through different phases and different levels. Even the election of Ahmadinejad in 2005 resembled one of these phases, though Ahmadinejad proved at the end that he wasn't the right guy for them. Today, with Ebrahim Raisi, things are different. They are more mature than they were before. They know more what they want, and they have the tools to push their own objectives and their own vision for the Iran they want in the way they see it, the right. So these are the Hezbollahis. I believe that also the Hezbollahis, the new Hezbollahis of Iran, are a clear manifestation of the transition from Khomeinism to Khameneism. So whereas the supreme leader today, Ayatollah Khamenei, is putting in front of everyone his own school of thought that he was building over the past 32 years.
Ali, this movement and trend that you're describing, is it fair to say that it's a top-down trend rather than a bottom-up trend? Because the voter turnout in this last election was noted by apathy. The lowest turnout ever, 48.8%.
Well, with respect to this election, I think it was clear to the establishment that there is going to be a low turnout. It was obvious, given the fact that this time, from the beginning, there were several steps that were taken and was showing that this is going to be the end game. This goes back to the parliamentary elections in 2020, when the Guardian Council vetted the candidates, and there were many of the I can call them moderates or the reformists not given the permission to run for the election, or were disqualified. This happened then, and we saw the parliament or the Majlis going towards a majority, a full majority of principalists, or what are called also as hardliners. This was like the first step. The second step was clearly with this election, the presidential election. Now there is a new phase that I think we're going to witness. But there is a point with respect to the elections. The establishment was, or regarded this election as the first election after 4 years of war, because they saw that Trump's years in the United States, the Trump term, was a kind of a war for Iran. And that's why they're dealing with it as if this country is coming out of a war, and they want everyone to be on one page. They're not ready for any nuanced position or any attempt to present the revolutionary Iran position for outside or inside in a different way. That's why I can call this as a war government, a government that is going to deal with a situation the Iranian establishment sees as very delicate and very sensitive. And that's why turnout didn't really mean as a main objective for them, though they wanted to get as much possible voters as they can. And what they were able to get was the 48% who voted in the last elections, though, as was written in Al Monitor and many other outlets, there were more than 10% of the votes void votes.
Ali, you mentioned the rise of the principalists or conservatives in the parliament in the election of 2020. And just to put some numbers on that dramatic turnaround you described, the conservatives took 221 out of 290 seats. That's an increase of 138 seats from 2016. And the reformist coalition, led by Rouhani, dropped from 121 seats to 20. Now, does this mean the reform movement is dead in Iran?
Well, the reform movement has been in the phase of fragmentation for years now. The emergence of Rouhani in 2013 was a kind of an attempt to save this path, this political path. But this political path is already facing several challenges. Besides being fragmented in this way, it's already facing challenges of leadership. It's already facing challenges of the Iran they want to see. They have different views on what Iran they want to see. At the same time, there is a big issue with their own supporters base, whereas many of those who used to support the reform move are kind of either seeing it as unable to achieve, or starting to build a different vision that contradicts in a way or another with the mainstream, the mainstream, or the reformists' mainstream. That's why it's not easy for the reform movement at the current situation to revive itself. This is one. The second issue is that even Rouhani himself wasn't a reformist. The whole team with Rouhani were not reformists. The team that Rouhani led in Iran for the last 8 years were a team of pragmatists. They were mainly either former officials under Hashemi Rafsanjani during his government time, or were more of technocrats who were in the establishment for years, such as Hamad Jawad Zarif and others. So yes, reformists were there as a supporter base, but they were not there as partners in ruling Iran. And this was also reflected on their own hopes, because they had a lot of hopes. In 2013, when Rouhani won the elections, there were many hopes from the reformist camp. They had hopes, a lot of hopes, but later on they discovered that Rouhani wasn't able really to achieve what they wanted. Even he had his own agenda, and it wasn't a reformist agenda, neither a principalist agenda. It was Rouhani's agenda, and this agenda was faced with fierce resistance from his rivals, the principalists, and was also faced with a lot of ailing hopes from his allies, the reformists.
Ali, let's turn to the Iran nuclear deal, and I want to set the question up this way. It seems from the outside that the nuclear deal signed in 2015 was the best and worst of times for Rouhani and his foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif. It was a great success and very popular when it was signed, and we recall the parades and acclamation at that time. The economic boost was substantial, and Rouhani continues to talk about it. And then it became, after President Trump withdrew from the deal in May 2018, it became the catalyst for the conservative backlash that has been used to deal this devastating blow for the reformists. I don't know if you would agree with that characterization, and I wonder if you think the Iranian deal still, the nuclear deal, Iranian nuclear deal still has popular appeal, and if you think Raisi will pick up where Rouhani left off and close that deal.
Well, Andrew, the issue is that when the deal was struck in Vienna in 2015, and even before, because there were several steps before, there was a lot of hope in Iran for this deal, because they thought this is going to change everything. This is going to get them out of the era of sanctions, out of the pressure that they were under for the past years. Even this was going to maybe change in the dynamics of politics inside Iran. But this deal, despite the fact it was strong, it was good for both sides, because mainly it was a deal between the United States of America and Iran. Other partners were just partners in this deal, but the main two players were Washington and Tehran. And that's why when Washington opted out from the deal, things started just, went to that dramatic end. Now, the other issue is that with respect to the bottom lines of both sides, the Iranian establishment and the American establishment, there was still a big gap. Now, they were trying to overcome these gaps or bridge these gaps with what I can call maybe as temporary settlements. But at the end, there was going to be a moment of truth, and they were going to face each other on these issues. For example, Iran's position from Israel, Iran's regional influence, Iran's ballistic missiles program, Iran's space program, the United States presence in the Middle East, the United States influence in Afghanistan and Iraq, or all these issues were going to be one day on another table. Now, maybe both sides were thinking that this could help in building the bridges of let's say trust between them, whereas they could maybe chat or negotiate or talk or engage in any way on these issues. But these issues, at least from my own point of view, weren't really negotiable. At least for example, Iran's position from Israel, Iran's ballistic missiles program. These are not negotiable for the establishment in Tehran, because for it, these are main pillars of its own strategy. So based on that, the end game of the nuclear deal was, in a way or another, was expected, but not now. So if Trump wasn't the president for the 4 years that he was, maybe Hillary Clinton was to be. other problems were to rise between the two countries. And these problems were going to be dealt with in a different way, because there was a moderate government, a pragmatic government in Tehran, and an establishment that represents the revolutionary idols for the revolution. So what happened is that Trump made things faster, whereas now they are really facing the real questions. Now, with respect to today's government in Tehran, Raisi's government, personally, I don't see that the JCPOA is going to be the first priority. This is an issue that should be taken into consideration. This is one. For the past years, the Iranians started learning how to deal with the status quo, how to deal with the pressure, how to deal with the sanctions. Yes, they're facing a lot of problems, but they are starting to get out of the hole. And this is for Khamenei himself, Khamenei in person. This means a lot, because he was preaching, he was advocating for the past years on how to deal with the situation, whereas there is no deals, there are sanctions, and Iran continuing its own, its own economic growth, its own progress, and its own development without relying on anyone. So today, this is the issue that I think the government is going to deal with, the new government in Tehran is going to deal with. Yes, if there is a deal, the way they want the deal, they don't mind. But if there is going to be a deal with concessions, they're not ready to give any concessions. And we saw for the past few months that the talks reached one point, whereas there were no new developments since then. And everyone was talking, we have so, but nothing was really changing, because the main points, the killer points, weren't possible to be negotiated, because that's the gap between the American bottom line and the Iranian bottom line. And now with the new government coming to power, we don't know really who's going to be the foreign minister or who's going to be the national security secretary general. But at the end, whoever is going to be there, they're not going to represent themselves. They are going to represent the establishment. And this time, I think Khamenei made it clear through a video that his Instagram account posted a few weeks ago. He is going to be the moderate, and they are going to be the hardliners. So the government is going to be the hardliners, and the supreme leader, is going to be the moderate. He said this when he was talking about the ballistic missiles cap, whereas he said it's going to be 2,000 kilometers. We knew this before because we heard it from IRGC commanders, but it was the first time we hear it from the voice from Khamenei himself. He said, my brothers wanted to be 4,000, 5,000, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers, but I'm saying it's better to be 2,000. So he's advocating that he is going to be the moderate within a group of hardliners. And this is going to complicate things more and more.
Ali, is there not, however, a political as well as an economic incentive for Raisi? Aren't Iranians tired of being isolated? Don't Iranians want the economic boost that can come from a new JCPOA and the kind of integration into the international economy, including investment and trade opportunities, which the government has been missing for decades, and certainly was an expectation when the deal was signed. And in fact, Zarif, in his final statement on the JCPOA, talked about these or referenced these kind of missed opportunities with regard to investment. Are those an incentives, or don't they matter given this political trend you're describing?
Yes, maybe before they were incentives, but today I think we are talking in a different situation. The rules of the game are changing. What these people, what the establishment right now in Tehran wants, is different from what maybe Rouhani's government wanted. And that's why we're seeing Raisi, the president. That's why we might see someone like Jalili or Bakri as foreign minister or in the National Security Council. And right now it seems that the whole file is going to be transferred from the foreign ministry to the National Security Council, and that makes things also different from the beginning, from at least from 2013 till now, from the beginning. So yeah, I think the Iranians are making their mind seriously on the whole concept of engaging on the JCPOA. And in the past couple of years, since they started changing in their own nuclear strategy, they started developing their own program in a different way, with the excuse of the American or Trump's administration's exit from the nuclear deal. They started changing the nuclear program, and today they are enriching uranium up to 60%. They are threatening to enrich uranium up to 90%. There are a lot of things being said on Iran being right now just on the threshold. So yeah, I think right now the establishment in Iran wants to be able to take a decision. Maybe they are still abiding, as Khamenei said from the beginning, by the fatwa that prohibits producing a nuclear weapon. But they want to be able to produce a nuclear weapon at the time they decide to do that. But this was a result of 4 years of the maximum pressure strategy, and also was a result of the sabotage that took place over the past years of Iran's nuclear sites, assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, and all these things. These added to the Iranians' concerns. This added to Khamenei's his own doctrine on not trusting the West and not trusting the United States in precise. This is what he was saying from the beginning, since 2013, even when he allowed his own negotiators to go to Oman and to speak with the Americans. Even when they accepted the nuclear deal, he was still saying we can't trust the Americans. And the Trump years helped him in stressing his own point of view. So today, yes, for the Iranians, JCPOA, if it goes with their own conditions, yes, they are going to go for it. But if it's not going to serve their own interests, at least from my own point of view, I see that it's not going to be their own priority at all.
Let's turn to some of the regional issues. I know you're tracking the situation in Afghanistan. Zarif hosted some of the Afghan parties to talks in Tehran a few weeks ago. What does Iran see as the opportunities and risks following the U.S. withdrawal in Afghanistan?
Under the situation now in Afghanistan is different from the day the Americans invaded Afghanistan at the beginning of the millennium, or when the Russians left Afghanistan at the end of the 80s. This time, Iran already has its own well-trained army of fighters, 40 million. Those thousands of Afghani fighters who helped the Iranians in Syria and were fighting there are now, ready and well-trained to play a role in future Afghanistan. This is one. Another issue, the relations with Taliban is different. Today, Taliban are coming to Tehran, they're meeting the Iranians, they're on good terms with them. They are even able to bring them together with the Afghani officials on a table to talk, despite if this is going to reach anywhere or not, because there are other paths going on in Qatar and different places. But Iran is more influential in Afghanistan today as from what it was before. I think today Afghanistan it's not like Iraq in 2003, but it's a new opportunity for the Iranians to expand their own influence in the region, to create more and more power to negotiate on one side, to pressure on another side, and to influence on the third side. So to them, there are some threats, maybe with respect to the government falling to Taliban, because I believe, despite the fact they have good relations with Taliban, they have their own militias in Afghanistan, they are still keen on keeping a strong government, I mean, at least a government, a solid government in Kabul. This is an issue the Iranians are really keen on. But this doesn't mean that they are not able to play with different cards they already have. The security concern is there, the water concern is there, many other concerns are there. But I think today the Iranians are in a better place to create a new situation in Afghanistan. I think it's for them.
Ali, you mentioned Iraq. I know you were there recently. You interviewed Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi. Help us understand the Iranian interest in Iraq, and do those armed groups or popular mobilization units, as they're known, those groups which are linked to Iran, are they under the direct command and influence of the IRGC, or are they independent actors? And how do you see the situation playing out, especially with regard to the sensitive issue of the US troop deployment there?
Well, Andrew, since the assassination of Major General Qasem Soleimani and Abdel Mohandes at the beginning of 2020, things started changing in Iraq or Iran. One of the issues is that the relation with the armed groups started changing in a way or another. The relation with the government also started changing in another way. Now, the Iranian influence, at least from my own point of view, from what I know, is less than it was before on many armed groups, though they are still able to influence them, but it's not the same like it was before. At least what I heard from Prime Minister Kadhimi, his relations with the Iranians aren't bad, by the way. The same as he's on good terms with the Americans, he's on good terms with the Iranians also. And this is something I understood from many issues I saw in front of me there. The situation, whereas these armed groups were able to have their own financial independence in a way or another for some time, helped them in creating their own list of their own interest lists. Whereas they have their own interests, they have their own objectives that are also, in a way or another, could be different from the ones of Iran. And it's not necessary if Iran is on good terms with Prime Minister Kadhimi that these armed groups like Kadhimi. And this was reflected in several occasions. So yes, the Iranians today in Iraq are in a different situation. They are trying to put things together. They are trying right now to create a new sort of relation with government. And this is not into the interest of some of the armed groups. And that's why we are seeing a lot of, I can call it sabotage. Sometimes some groups are launching rockets, and it's not the Iranians. At least this is what they are saying. This is what they are saying. This is what the Prime Minister is saying. This is what Kadhimi told me when I met him. He said, on several occasions, it wasn't the Iranians who asked these groups to launch rockets. It was that they took the decision and they launched the rockets for their own interest. Now, how much this is accurate, how much this is true, I think this should be investigated by us, reporters and journalists, to come to a real conclusion.
Let's turn to Syria. Is Iran content with its position in Syria, and how do you see relations evolving among the Syrian government, the Iranian government, and Russia?
Well, it seems there is a status quo now in Syria. Things are kind of calm in a way or another. Now, the Iranian-Russian competition for influence in the country is not going to stop. But this is not going out of control. I think the Syrians themselves are trying to right now put things into a certain frame, whereas people could share this influence without impacting or affecting the government or the whole establishment in Syria. Now, the Iranians today are still having their own interests in areas like East Syria, and this is creating an issue with the Americans. We saw several American air raids on Iranian positions there, Iranian groups or Iranian militias, or even Iranians themselves in these areas. But the situation in Syria right now, I think it's not too much under focus because there is nothing much happening on the ground. Assad, I think, in the current moment, or at least yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday, was able to okay, let me just repeat this. So just 2 days ago, Assad was inaugurated for a new term. I mean, okay, this is not news, but at the end, to the Iranians, this means a lot in showing the picture of a country that was able to get out of a situation of war to a situation whereas the president is being inaugurated. And he's the same president that they were fighting for the past 10 years now. So in a way or another, this is a kind of a victory for the Iranians. This is what they see. It's also a victory for the Russians. But as I told you, the sharing influence or competing for influence is what's happening right now. It's happening in a silent way.
Ali, we're running out of time, but I want to ask 2 more questions briefly, although they're topics that we could go on at length about. What about the Iranian perception of its interest in Lebanon, given the difficult governance situation there? How is its relationship with Hezbollah, and how does it see the current situation in Lebanon?
Well, Andrew, as for Lebanon, relations between Iran and Hezbollah, I mean, they are not relations. Hezbollah is an organic extension of the Wilayat al-Faqih doctrine. So they are Lebanese, indigenous Lebanese, but at the same time, they share with the Iranians the same idea, the same the Iranian establishment, the same doctrine. That's why I don't think that anything is going to change with respect to this factor. This is going to continue. The more Hezbollah is strong in Lebanon, the more the Iranians are influential in Lebanon. Now, the fact that the government is ailing, there is no government actually in Lebanon. There is a power vacuum right now. There is real issues with respect to everything, from economic crisis to political crisis to social crisis. What's happening is that the more the government is disintegrated, the more the situation is getting complicated, the more the Shia community are being reliant on Iran and Hezbollah, because they are providing them with aids. They are becoming the what I can call the de facto government or de facto ruler over here in many areas. And this is not changing anything for America or any of the other influencers or who are trying to influence the situation. It's changing it to the worst and not to the better, because the more the pressure is going to add on Lebanon, the more people are going to resort to their own sects and to the governments that are backing their sects and their sectarian leaders. So the situation is going to be complicated more and more. At the end, whenever there is a table to talk Lebanon, Iran is going to be present on that table, either by itself or through Hezbollah, who, as I said at the beginning, is an organic extension of the doctrine that's ruling Iran.
Ali, last question. Do you expect Iran's support for Hamas and Islamic Jihad to increase under Raisi, or more of the same in terms of Iran's engagement with Palestinian groups?
Well, I think this government is going to show more support. Now, with respect to financial support, I don't think this is an issue that governments really decide on. But we're going to see more vocal support, more the new foreign minister, the new president are going to have stronger statements, stronger stances on supporting Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. Maybe we will see more picture of them meeting their leaders. What I mean, with respect to the solid support, the financial support, the logistic support, these are issues that the IRGC deals with. So it's not going to really matter who's running Iran, the government.
Ali, this was great. Thank you for taking the time today, and thank you for your many contributions to Al-Monitor over the years. You were one of our original contributors, and I know our readers and today our listeners very much appreciate getting your take on what's happening in the Middle East.
Thank you very much, Andrew, to you, to Al-Monitor, and to our listeners. And for sure, I'll continue to write whenever there's something new for me.
Thank you. Look forward to that. We will return after this short break.
I'm Ben Caspit, Al-Monitor veteran columnist reporting from Israel, one of the world's major news and action suppliers of all times, comparing to its tiny size. I've been covering and analyzing the political, diplomatic, and military arenas in Israel for over 34 years. My best-selling biography, The Netanyahu Years, was out 2 years ago. I covered 7 prime ministers, 1 major war, 2 intifadas, 1 prime minister's assassination, 2.5 peace treaties, 4 military operations in Gaza, and it's not letting up anytime soon. I am glad to invite you to On Israel, our brand new podcast, where we will discuss major events in Israel and its surroundings, talk to decision makers, leaders, and analysts, and try to understand the chaos that comes with the territory of Israel and the Middle East. You will never have a dull moment with us. See you soon here on Israel, Al-Monitor.
Thanks again to our guest, Ali Hashem, and to our production team of Phil Calabro of Al-Monitor and Beowulf Rochlin of Two Squared Media Productions. And thanks to all of you for listening. We will return next week, and in the meantime, please sign up for this and our other Al-Monitor podcast, On Israel, at your favorite podcast platform.